your own immune cells become your enemy. They turn against you, disarmed and dazed by an invisible invader. Dark purple, bruise-like tumors bloom all over your skin, a cancer of the blood vessels that should only appear in the very old at the end of their days. But you are 25. Your lungs fill with a rare fungus that usually only threatens the fragile lives of premature infants, turning every breath into a desperate, suffocating struggle. You are suffocating on dry land, drowning in your own lungs. You are young, you are strong, but your body is being dismantled from the inside. Your bones ache, fever burns you at night, and your mind is clouded by a strange, frightening haze. The doctors called it the gay plague, a stigma that was as cruel as the disease itself. Then it appeared in the blood of hemophiliacs, innocent victims of a contaminated supply, children whose only hope for life became their death sentence. It was found in women who had never used drugs and were faithful to their husbands. It was found in their newborn children, who came into this world already carrying the shadow of death. The killer had no face, no name, only a trail of dead bodies stretching across continents. 35 million dead, and the count continues to grow relentlessly every day. It was the perfect organism, the perfect killer. A virus so clever it attacks the very general of your body's army, leaving the soldiers to wander aimlessly as the enemy breaks through the gates. It rewrites your own DNA, embedding itself forever in your genetic code, becoming a part of what makes you you. It is not just a guest, it becomes the master. By the time you feel sick, you will have been a silent carrier for years. A ghost, spreading its shadow long before anyone knows you are cursed. They didn't know they were already the walking dead. In 1980, hospitals in New York and Los Angeles started getting calls. Young men, previously perfectly healthy, athletic, full of life, were presenting with Kaposi's sarcoma. It was a disease of elderly Mediterranean men, a footnote in medical textbooks, something so rare that most doctors had only ever seen it in pictures. Now, it was an epidemic on the streets of Greenwich Village. Purple lesions appeared on the faces and bodies of dancers, artists, waiters. On the other side of the country, in Los Angeles, another medical mystery was unfolding: an explosion of pneumocystis pneumonia cases. This lung infection, caused by a fungus that lives in the lungs of almost everyone, was so rare that most doctors had never seen it. It was a disease of the profoundly immunodeficient, chemotherapy patients, the dying, and now young, healthy men were suffocating from it. The doctors were completely baffled. They searched for an environmental toxin, a new street drug, an unknown carcinogen. No one could connect a skin cancer with a suffocating pneumonia. A community that had just celebrated a decade of liberation since Stonewall found itself under siege by an invisible enemy. The nightly whispers in bars and clubs turned to panic. When San Francisco reported the same strange clusters of disease, the Centers for Disease Control understood. This was no coincidence. This was a coordinated attack. Of the first 300 patients, 242 were homosexuals. The press, and even some medical professionals gave the disease a cruel, dismissive name: GRID, gay-related immune deficiency. This name was not just inaccurate, it was deadly. It created a false sense of security in the rest of the population. They believed it was someone else's problem. But the name didn't stick because the virus was indifferent to sexuality. It was only interested in blood. Soon, it appeared in patients with hemophilia, a genetic disorder requiring frequent transfusions of blood clotting factor concentrates derived from the plasma of thousands of donors. These concentrates, known as factor VIII, were a miracle of modern medicine, allowing boys with hemophilia to live normal lives. But this miracle turned into a curse. The national blood supply, a symbol of life-saving altruism, was poisoned. Blood for the concentrates was collected from thousands of sources, including paid blood donation centers in poor neighborhoods, where many of the donors were intravenous drug users. A single infected donor could poison an entire batch. Children who had never known anything but life-giving injections were now receiving a deadly poison directly into their veins. The nightmare was just beginning. Soon, 2 more risk groups were added to the first 2. The disease began to appear among intravenous drug users who shared needles, and then among immigrants from Haiti. The press created a sinister acronym, the 4-H Club: homosexuals, hemophiliacs, heroin users, and Haitians. This was not just a medical classification, it was a social stigma. This stigma sowed panic and racism, allowing the rest of society to wrongly believe they were safe. Haitian immigrants in Miami lost their jobs, their children expelled from schools. The world was divided into us and them, the clean and the unclean, those who deserved their illness and those who were supposedly innocent. But the virus made no such distinctions. It was completely impartial in its thirst for destruction. It was simply a replication machine, and the human body was its perfect environment. By July 1982, there were 500 known cases in America. A year later, Europe recorded its first 100. It was then that this terrifying new disease was given its official, clinical name, Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, AIDS. A name that promised no cure, only a slow, inevitable decay. Acquired, because it was not congenital. Immunodeficiency, because it destroyed the body's defenses. Syndrome, because it was not one disease, but a whole swarm of opportunistic infections that preyed on a defenseless body. The first recorded patient in America was an immigrant from Haiti who had worked in the Congo in the 1960s. This was a clue. Scientists turned their gaze to Africa, hunting for the origin of the plague. They began to analyze old frozen blood samples, searching for traces of the invisible killer. They discovered a virus in chimpanzees that was strikingly similar to the human one, simian immunodeficiency virus, or SIV. Primates had lived with it for a very long time. The virus and host had found a fragile equilibrium. In humans, there was no such equilibrium. For its new host, the virus proved to be relentless. The theory became clear. Somewhere in Central or West Africa, perhaps in the early 20th century, a local hunter, while butchering a chimpanzee carcass, got the animal's blood into an open wound on his hand. A simian virus crossed the species barrier. This process, known as zoonosis, has happened countless times in human history. In the human body, this once manageable primate virus mutated, turning into something far more lethal. Humanity inherited a new demon from the animal kingdom. This zoonotic jump was the quiet, unnoticed spark that ignited a global fire, one that smoldered for decades in isolated African villages before erupting. And this demon was preparing to claim its first celebrity victim, an artist who seemed to have arrived from another planet. Klaus Nomi, a German countertenor, was a star of the 70s and 80s underground. With his sharp black lipstick, otherworldly makeup, and a voice that soared from operatic heights to a cabaret growl, he cultivated the image of an alien. He was a living work of art, defying classification. He was the first to fuse classical opera with avant-garde pop music and the aesthetics of 1930s cabaret. He was a pioneer, an original, and he would become one of the first famous faces of a disease that had no name, no cause, and no cure. He told a friend that this alien disease would simply help him return to his home world. It was a tragic joke that masked an indescribable horror. During his final examinations, doctors were horrified. His immune system had vanished, completely erased. His T-cell count was near zero. He had Kaposi's sarcoma, stomach ulcers, raging herpes. But the virus conducting it all, the puppet master pulling the strings of his cellular collapse, was elusive. It truly seemed extraterrestrial. A race began to unmask this phantom, to prove its terrestrial origin. Two teams on opposite sides of the Atlantic were drawn into a desperate struggle that became one of the most bitter scientific rivalries in history. In the United States, the formidable National Cancer Institute, headed by the famous and ambitious Dr. Robert Gallo. In France, a quieter, more methodical research group at the Pasteur Institute, led by Luc Montagnier. The fates of millions depended on their work. This was not just a scientific race, it was a battle for national pride, for billions of dollars in patent royalties, and for the Nobel Prize. The winner would go down in history as the savior of humanity. The loser would be forgotten. In Paris, virologist Luc Montagnier and his colleague Françoise Barré-Sinoussi took a lymph node sample from a patient suffering from lymphadenopathy, swollen lymph nodes, an early sign of the mysterious illness. In the patient's blood cells, they found it, an unknown retrovirus, a type of virus that does the unthinkable. It writes itself into your existence backwards, violating the central dogma of molecular biology. Normally, genetic information is written in DNA. The body creates a temporary copy, RNA, to build proteins. It's a one-way street, but a retrovirus brings its own RNA and a special enzyme, reverse transcriptase. It forces the host cell to reverse the process, transcribing the virus's RNA back into the cell's own DNA. The invader becomes an integral part of you, hiding in the very nucleus of your cells where the immune system cannot reach it. Montagnier and Barré-Sinoussi had found the hijacker. He shared his discovery with his colleagues at the Pasteur Institute, but they were skeptical. In desperation, wanting to get confirmation and start a collaboration, Montagnier sent a sample of his discovery to an American, Robert Gallo. Gallo had previously discovered HTLV, the human T-cell leukemia virus, which also attacked the very same immune cells that were disappearing in AIDS patients. Montagnier hoped they could find a common link. It was a fateful decision. But something went wrong. In Gallo's powerful American laboratory, they claimed they couldn't cultivate the virus from the French sample. The collaboration reached a dead end. Montagnier, feeling he was being ignored, decided to publish his results. On May 20th, 1983, in the journal Science, he named his discovery LOVE, lymphadenopathy-associated virus. He noted that the virus was similar to Gallows virus, but critically different. In leukemia, T cells multiplied uncontrollably. In AIDS, they were destroyed. The world now had a suspect, but the case was far from closed. Almost a year later, in April 1984, Robert Gallo called a high-profile press conference in Washington. Before the entire world, alongside Secretary of Health and Human Services Margaret Heckler, he announced that his laboratory had not only isolated the virus that causes AIDS, but had also developed a blood test to detect it. He named his virus HTLV-3. The world erupted in applause. The American government celebrated a triumph. Heckler even boldly declared that a vaccine would be ready in 2 years. It was a statement full of political optimism, but tragically far from scientific reality. But the French were furious. They claimed that Gallows virus was the very same sample they had sent him, which had accidentally or intentionally contaminated his own cultures. A years-long battle for primacy, patents, and the Nobel Prize began. Our immune system is a complex, ruthless army. T cells are its elite special forces. Among them are T helper cells, or CD4 cells, the field commanders. They identify the enemy, organize the defense, and send a signal to the T killer cells. T killer cells are the assassins, hunting down and destroying any of your own cells infected by a virus, punching holes in their membranes until they burst. And then there are T suppressor cells, the officers who call off the attack when the war is won, preventing the army from destroying its own country. It is a perfectly balanced war machine, honed by millions of years of evolution. HIV is a weapon of unimaginable genius. It doesn't attack the soldiers. It specifically finds and destroys the T helper cells, the commanders. It uses a protein on its surface to pick the lock of the CD4 receptor on the T helper's surface, like a thief using a pick on a lock. Once inside, it turns the command tent into an enemy production factory. Without orders, the T killer cells don't know who to attack. The T suppressor cells don't know when to stop. The entire chain of command collapses into chaos. The person is left defenseless, their body a country without an army, waiting for any opportunistic infection to invade and conquer it. A common cold becomes a threat. Candidiasis, usually a harmless fungus in the oral cavity, proliferates, covering the tongue and throat with a thick white coating, making swallowing agonizing. Toxoplasmosis, a parasite carried by cats that causes no symptoms in healthy people, penetrates the brain in an AIDS patient, causing abscesses, seizures, and dementia. Cytomegalovirus, a relative of herpes, attacks the retina, slowly and inexorably leading to complete blindness. The body becomes a battlefield where any enemy, even the weakest, wins. In June 1984, the Hollywood actor Rock Hudson, the quintessential leading man, learned he had AIDS. He kept this news a secret, not only from the public but also from his partner, Mark Christian. In the hypermasculine world of Hollywood, Hudson's image was that of a hero, a conqueror of women's hearts. The revelation of his homosexuality would have destroyed his career. The revelation that he had the gay plague was a secret he nearly took to his grave. During the filming of the series Dynasty, he had an upcoming kissing scene with actress Linda Evans. Hudson was terrified. Although he knew the virus was not transmitted through saliva, he feared even the slightest risk or simply the panic that might ensue. Before the scene, he rinsed his mouth with every possible antiseptic. and during the kiss he kept his lips tightly pressed together. No one on set knew what internal battle he was fighting. He looked emaciated, his speech became slurred, but everyone attributed it to dieting or the flu. But such secrets do not stay buried. When his condition worsened, he secretly flew to Paris for experimental treatment with the drug HPA-23, the same one being tested at the Pasteur Institute, but it was already too late. His press secretary announced to the world that Rock Hudson had AIDS. It was an earthquake. The face of AIDS changed forever. It was no longer the disease of nameless people from marginalized groups. It was Rock Hudson's disease. After his death, his close friend, Elizabeth Taylor, furious at the government's inaction and public fear, co-founded AMFOR, the American Foundation for AIDS Research, turning her grief into a crusade. A landmark lawsuit was filed against Hudson's estate. Mark Christian claimed that by concealing his diagnosis, Hudson had put him at risk of infection. The court agreed, setting a precedent that a person with HIV has a legal responsibility to inform their partners. The jury awarded Christian $14.5 million. The fear of AIDS now had a financial price. The disease was not just a medical crisis, it was a social and legal bombshell. Patients died in isolation. They were placed in isolation rooms which only a few close relatives were allowed to enter in full protective gear: gowns, gloves, masks. Nurses would leave food trays at the door, afraid to go inside. Priests refused to perform last rites. Funeral homes refused to embalm the bodies. They were cremated immediately after death, as if they were radioactive waste. The public was convinced that it was their disease, that of drug addicts, of homosexuals. People believed that a moral wall would protect us. But the virus did not respect morality. When it was found in children with hemophilia, in faithful wives, in newborn infants, the terrible truth became obvious. The virus had three main pathways: through blood during transfusions or sharing needles, through sexual contact, and from an infected mother to her child during pregnancy, childbirth, or breastfeeding. It was not transmitted through a handshake, conversation, sharing a meal, or living under the same roof. But fear is irrational. The stigma was already burning with an unquenchable fire. In response to government inaction and public hysteria, a movement was born. Activist groups like ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, took to the streets. Their slogan, "Silence, Hackadass, Death," thundered at demonstrations. They were young, enraged, and watched as their friends died one by one. They staged acts of civil disobedience, lay down on Wall Street to stop trading, and interrupted church services to condemn the church's stance on condoms. They threw the ashes of their deceased lovers onto the White House lawn. They were angry, desperate, and incredibly effective. They forced the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, to speed up the drug approval process, turning a bureaucratic procedure that took years into months. In 1987, the killer finally received its official name, which we all know today: human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, and after a fierce 3-year legal and scientific battle, a decision was reached. The Frenchman, Luc Montagnier, was officially recognized as the first to discover the virus. The American Robert Gallo is the one who proved its direct link to AIDS. On March 31, 1988, U.S. President Ronald Reagan and French Prime Minister Jacques Chirac signed an agreement declaring the discovery a joint achievement. The war for recognition was over. The war against the virus itself had barely begun. In the Soviet Union, the official reaction was denial. They refused to believe in the American disease. In a country that claimed to have no social vices, there could be no soil for such a plague to grow. In 1986, the Minister of Health of the RSFSR made an official statement. AIDS is a Western disease. We have no basis for the spread of this infection because in the USSR there is no homosexuality, drug addiction, or prostitution. In the same year, during a Soviet-American teleconference, a Soviet woman uttered the now infamous phrase, "There is no sex in the USSR." Moreover, Soviet propaganda and the KGB actively promoted their own conspiracy theory, known as Operation Infection. They spread disinformation through controlled media outlets worldwide, claiming that HIV was created in a secret American military laboratory at Fort Detrick as a biological weapon. This lie was picked up by newspapers in India, Africa, and South America, and still finds its supporters today, poisoning public consciousness and undermining trust in science. But while politicians played their games, the virus was already there, spreading silently. In 1987, the country reluctantly introduced HIV screening. By 1988, the first 30 infected citizens were identified. Since then, their number has only grown. The first official HIV patient in the Soviet Union was a military man, a translator, who had just returned from a work trip to Tanzania. He later admitted to having had sexual contact with a local resident there. He went to the doctors with complaints of headaches, nausea, diarrhea, and sharp temperature spikes. He was treated with antibiotics for a suspected tropical fever and discharged in satisfactory condition. 2 years later, he returned. Dark red spots were appearing on his face, shin, and thigh. Tumors were growing inside his rectum. The attending physician, who had read about a strange overseas illness, suspected the truth. The diagnosis was Kaposi's sarcoma, a sure sign. Before he was officially diagnosed, the patient had managed to infect 30 other people, both men and women. One of these women later gave birth to an HIV-positive child. The dam of denial had burst. Then, in late 1988, a catastrophe occurred that shook the entire country. In the southern city of Elista, the capital of Kalmykia, a mass outbreak occurred in a children's hospital. A young woman and her newborn child were diagnosed with HIV. Investigators traced the chain of infection backward. The virus passed from the child to the mother during breastfeeding through small sores in the infant's mouth and cracks on the mother's nipples. But where did the child get it from? The answer was horrifying. The infant had been infected in the hospital itself. A catastrophic failure of medical protocol. The staff, overworked and using outdated, reusable equipment, had reused unsterilized syringes and catheters. They had missed a previous HIV-positive patient, a man who was the father of one of the children in the hospital, and their negligence turned the hospital into a breeding ground for the plague. The result was monstrous. 75 infected infants and 4 of their mothers. The Soviet Union could no longer pretend it was someone else's problem. Mandatory testing was introduced for blood donors, foreigners, and anyone who had been abroad. Anonymous testing centers were opened. A massive propaganda campaign, AIDS Does Not Sleep, was launched. Doctors explained that condoms could prevent transmission. But in the Soviet Union of the 1980s, finding rubber product number 2 was a challenge in itself, let alone having it available around the clock. Across the ocean, another star was fading. Freddie Mercury, the godlike frontman of Queen, was wasting away before everyone's eyes. At his birthday party in Ibiza in the autumn of 1988, he looked magnificent. Just 2 years later, photographs showed an emaciated, fragile man, a ghost of his former self. The drastic transformation was a sign of the disease progressing at a terrifying speed. He refused to talk about it even with close friends, brushing off questions about his health. His inner circle of friends and musicians created a protective cocoon around him, fending off the intrusive paparazzi who circled like vultures, offering huge sums of money for any information. In 1991, during the filming of the music video for the song "These Are the Days of Our Lives," makeup artists and lighting technicians had to make incredible efforts to hide the signs of his illness. In the surreal black and white video for the song "I'm Going Slightly Mad," an emaciated Freddie, wearing a wig made of bananas, sings, "I'm overheating, I'm burning in a fever. My friend, you don't look so good." Millions of fans heard these words, but only a few understood the hidden confession within them. He worked until the very end. Knowing he was dying, he locked himself in the studio in Montreux, forcing himself to record vocals for future songs while he still had the strength. He told the band, "Just write me material. I will sing, and you can finish it later." Thus, the posthumous album Made in Heaven was born. Barcelona, one of Queen's most famous anthems, was a song Freddie wrote with the opera diva Montserrat Caballé. They were supposed to perform it together at the opening ceremony of the 1992 Olympic Games. But AIDS stole that moment. Freddie was gone. On July 25, 1992, as the world watched the opening of the Games in Barcelona, his soaring voice filled the stadium, but only in a recording. It was a ghostly tribute to the man consumed by the plague of the 20th century. Just 24 hours before his death, he made a public statement confirming he had AIDS. He wanted the world to learn the truth from him. After his death, the remaining members of Queen and their manager founded the Mercury Phoenix Trust, a charity that has raised millions to fight AIDS worldwide. Ryan White was not a rock star or a Hollywood actor. He was a teenager from Indiana with hemophilia who was diagnosed with AIDS at the age of 13, having been infected through a blood product. For the next 5 years, he fought 2 wars, one against the virus in his body, the other against the hatred and ignorance of his community. When he tried to return to school, all hell broke loose. His classmates' parents protested, afraid that Ryan would infect their children just by being in the same room. They didn't want him to sit at the same desks or drink from the same water fountains. They demanded scientific proof of his safety, ignoring the statements of all the world's leading scientists. The case went to court several times. Finally, he was allowed to attend school, but under cruel conditions. He was forbidden from using the same restrooms as other students or eating from shared dishes. He got a job as a paperboy to feel normal, but was forced to quit. People canceled their subscriptions, fearing the virus could be transmitted through the newspaper. He endured daily insults from strangers. One day, a shot was fired through his family's window. The family was forced to move to another, more tolerant town. He was supported by celebrities like Elton John and Michael Jackson, who used their fame to draw attention to his plight. In 1988, Ryan White spoke before the President's Commission on AIDS about discrimination. He became a national symbol of the fight against AIDS, not as a disease of sin, but as a human tragedy. He gave the epidemic the face of a child, forcing a frightened nation to look beyond its prejudices. The disease killed him on April 8, 1990, a month before his high school graduation. On the day of his funeral, flags in Indiana were flown at half-mast. Former President Reagan, who had been infamously silent about AIDS for years, gave a speech, finally acknowledging, "It is the disease that is frightening, not the people who suffer from it." In August of that same year, Congress passed the Ryan White Care Act, a landmark piece of emergency aid legislation. It provided funding for medical care for HIV-positive people who could not afford it. The boy, who had been treated like a leper, provided a lifeline for hundreds of thousands of others with his death. The act was extended several times, and in 2010, the 22-year-old ban on immigration to the U.S. for people with HIV was finally lifted. Then, a glimmer of hope appeared. In June 1995, the FDA approved the first protease inhibitor, a new class of drugs that blocks a key enzyme the virus needs to assemble new viral particles. This marked the beginning of a new era, highly active antiretroviral therapy, or HAART. Almost overnight, the death rate from AIDS in developed countries plummeted. The number of hospitalizations decreased. People who were on their deathbeds literally got up and returned to life. This was called the Lazarus effect. Patients blinded by CMV retinitis regained their sight. Patients with dementia regained their mental clarity. It was like a miracle. HAART, a combination of 3 or 4 different drugs, does not cure HIV. It suppresses the virus, forcing it into a state of near-complete dormancy and preventing it from replicating. This allows the immune system to slowly recover. It turned a death sentence into a manageable chronic condition. An HIV-positive mother who received proper treatment could now give birth to a healthy, HIV-negative child. With consistent treatment, the life expectancy and quality of life for a person with HIV became nearly identical to that of an uninfected person. Actor Charlie Sheen has been living with the virus for over a decade. Basketball legend Magic Johnson for over 30. A large-scale 2011 study proved that timely treatment reduces the risk of HIV transmission by an astonishing 96%. Treatment became prevention. The war on HIV has now become a pharmaceutical one. In the Russian city of Irkutsk, a factory produces 14 of the 25 generic drugs used to treat HIV in the country. These are high-quality analogs that make vital treatment affordable and replace more expensive original drugs. Although they do not yet have their own unique formulation, they are actively researching new molecules. The complexity of creating these medications lies in the virus's life cycle. It penetrates an immune cell, forces it to become a factory for producing new viruses, and then the cell bursts, releasing a new army to infect other cells. Scientists and pharmacists around the world are in a constant arms race with the virus, developing drugs that can anticipate and block its relentless mutations. The Irkutsk factory alone can formulate about 50 different treatment regimens, adapted for all types of patients: the newly diagnosed, treatment-experienced patients, the elderly, pregnant women, and even children. In the Russian Federation, HIV treatment is covered by the state budget, and these domestic generics allow the system to provide therapy to as many people as possible. Living with HIV means lifelong medication. Even a single missed pill can pose a risk, giving the rapidly mutating virus a chance to develop resistance. The global goal now is to simplify treatment, to improve quality of life. The Holy Grail is a one-pill, once-a-day regimen. Such drugs already exist, and in Russia, the Irkutsk enterprise is working on creating its own affordable and convenient version. Thanks to them, PrEP and PEP are also available in Russia. PEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis, is an emergency course of drugs taken within 72 hours of a possible exposure. PrEP, or pre-exposure prophylaxis, is a daily pill for high-risk individuals that can prevent infection. This is no longer just treatment, it's a firewall. How good it is to be alive. These are the words the legendary dancer Rudolf Nureyev often said to his doctor in the final years of his life. In 1984, after becoming the director of the Paris Opera Ballet, he underwent a mandatory medical examination that revealed he had HIV. Tests showed the virus had been in his body for more than 4 years. For a long time, Nureyev refused experimental treatment. He was a dancer, and the painful injections interfered with his art. His doctor recalled finding boxes of a new experimental drug unopened in Nureyev's hotel room. In 1992, already gravely ill, he traveled to Kazan. He was so weak he could not walk down the airplane steps on his own, but he still accepted an offer to conduct at a ballet festival. Upon his return to France, he was hospitalized. Friends said the only thing that kept him alive was his passionate desire to stage one last production, Romeo and Juliet. He finished the rehearsals, and then, in January 1993, he died in his sleep. The official cause of death was pneumocystis pneumonia, the same rare infection that had heralded the arrival of the plague more than a decade earlier. In Russia, the epidemic exploded in the second half of the 1990s, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Economic chaos, unemployment, and social depression led to an explosive rise in injecting drug use, especially heroin. Over 70% of infections occurred through shared needles. After 2002, the numbers seemed to decline, but it was a false dawn. 3 years later, the growth resumed, and this time the virus broke out of the risk groups. Now, it was spreading widely throughout the general population via heterosexual contact. Officially, about 1 million people are living with HIV in Russia today, but unofficial estimates reach up to 1.5 million. The Kemerovo and Irkutsk regions are the epicenters. The message is stark and clear. HIV is no longer a disease of gays and drug addicts. It affects absolutely everyone. The surveillance system in Russia is massive. 30 million tests are conducted annually. Testing is mandatory for blood donors, military personnel, and foreign citizens wishing to obtain a work permit. All pregnant women are tested. All prisoners. All patients before surgery. And now, self-testing is also available. Even blood isn't needed. A saliva swab, taken from the gums with a special spatula, is placed into a reagent. After 15-30 minutes, the result is ready, with a manufacturer's stated accuracy of over 99%. In many cities, there are mobile testing units offering free and anonymous analysis. If the rapid test is positive, the sample is sent to a regional AIDS center for confirmation. There, a final diagnosis is made and a treatment plan is prescribed. A vaccine for the plague of the 20th century remains elusive. Scientists have not yet managed to overcome the virus's incredible ability to mutate. It changes its outer shell so quickly that the immune system simply cannot keep up to produce effective antibodies. Moreover, the virus hides in latent reservoirs, dormant cells where it is invisible to the immune system and drugs. But scientists have not given up. An American drug is in the late stages of trials. It is designed to create immunity to 4 different antigen variants in the hope of covering several global HIV strains. In Russia, 3 vaccines are under development at once. In Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Novosibirsk. They are undergoing the first phase of clinical trials on healthy volunteers. The next stage is testing on HIV-positive patients to check the vaccine's therapeutic effect. But the third and final stage is the highest mountain. It requires thousands of people, both sick and healthy, who must be monitored for 3 to 5 years after vaccination. Every reaction, every interaction with other drugs, every change in the immune system must be tracked. A commercially available AIDS vaccine is not something to be expected in the next 5 to 7 years. The hope for a complete cure is linked to isolated, almost miraculous cases. The Berlin patient, Timothy Ray Brown, and the London patient, Adam Castillejo, are the only two people who have been completely cured of HIV. Both received bone marrow transplants from donors with a rare genetic mutation, CCR5 delta 32, which makes their cells immune to the virus. This procedure is extremely dangerous, expensive, and suitable only for a few individuals who have both HIV and leukemia. But it is proven that a cure is biologically possible. It is no longer science fiction. It is a goal. Researchers around the world are working on gene therapy to replicate this effect without the dangerous transplant. In Russia, the infection rate is 16 people per 1,000. This means that on one crowded subway train during rush hour, there are at least 12 people living with HIV. Most of them do not know their status. They live, work, and love, unaware of the shadow they carry inside. Every day, 270 new infection cases are registered in Russia alone. That is more than 8,000 people a month. In a year, almost 100,000 people, the entire population of a small city. The war is not yet over. Stigma, fear, and ignorance are still killing, preventing people from getting tested and starting treatment. In Russia and other countries, the HIV dissident movement is thriving, denying the existence of the virus, refusing therapy, and condemning not only themselves but also their children to death. The virus is mutating, developing resistance to drugs. And as long as there is even one infected person without access to treatment, the global threat remains. This is the plague of our time, and it is still with us. What else must happen for us to call this an epidemic?